to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just for the record, Todd Sorensen is missing this evening, and the rest of the board members are here. Okay, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
By Lee.
Second?
By Dan. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, that passes 6-0. The consent agenda. Consent agenda items are routine in nature, and they're going to be enacted with one motion of the board. It consists of the check wire transfer, the bank reconciliation statements from June, July, and August of 2014, the approval of the school board minutes of September 8th, September 22nd, and the study session on September 22nd, resignations, terminations, and non-renewals as listed. Do I have a motion? Sorry, can I miss one?
Yeah.
I don't.
The districts.
Oh, the district. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, this is a new one. And then the district staff development committee roster as well. Do I have a motion to approve?
So made.
By Chad, second.
I'll second the motion.
By Rich. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. The resolution for acceptance of gifts. Those are listed in our board packet, and those will be approved as a roll call vote as it's requested. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution of gifts?
So moved.
By Lee, second?
Second?
Second. Sorry, my mind went blank. Sorry, Dan. All those in favor, or I'm sorry, roll call vote. Chad?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Lee? Aye. Aye. Dan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
All right, that passes 6-0. Oh, sure. She told me I didn't have to do that. Do you want me to? Okay. Okay. I'm going to list off just the gifts that we just approved. The Wells Fargo Community Support Campaign for the Prior Lake High School. Let me list these all on. Okay. For Loretta Spurley for $461.52. Susan Lundquist for $6. Laura Willette for $9.24. $60 for Joseph Samuels. Also, Target Corporation through the Take Charge program for Prior Lake High School in the amount of $11,000, $668.84. Target Corporation for the Take Charge of Education program for Five Hawks Elementary in the amount of $4,350. Also, Target Corporation through the Take Charge of Education program for Hidden Oaks for $4,102.12. $75 from John Frank through the Blue Cross Blue Shield for Five Hawks. Donations from the Prior Lake Optimists for $1,165 for the band and swim summer scholarships. $2,000 for the Junior Optimists. $500 for the Community Ed Halloween Party. $1,000 for the Prior Lake High School Social Workers and Drivers Ed scholarships. And lastly, $250 from the Prior Lake Lions for the Community Ed Halloween Party. And thank you very much for all your donations. Okay. At this point, we are at the point of Laker Pride, and this is a time that we can do some special recognition. The first up is Sonia Pirani for her fundraiser to support the Scott County Children's Crisis Nursery. Come on up.
Sonia Pirani, and she is a third grader at Jeffers Pond Elementary, and Sonia decided to do a fundraiser, and you came up with the idea of bookmarks. Spoken to family and friends, and tell us about why you chose the crisis.
Out and fundraise
And it would go to help other children. How many bookmarks did you sell? How much money did you raise? $500. That is quite impressive. We are very proud of you. That is quite, was that your goal, was to raise 500? That's children in their lives, right? So we wanted to congratulate you for your efforts. So we have this for you. It says Sonia Pirani, and you are a Laker Pride tonight. And we're very proud of you and the work that you've done to help other children. That's really quite amazing. You don't have to. We are very proud of you, and we're very excited that you could be here tonight for Laker Pride, so congratulations. Great job. Next, we are going to have our Prior Lake Rotary friends come up, my friends, our fellow Rotarians. Come to the front of the room. For the last 3 years, we have been partnering with the Prior Lake Rotary as a nonprofit partner for the Lakefront Music Fest. And this year, if you come right up in here, we have had really a wonderful year. Our co-chairs are here, Mary Erickson, Doug Gesme from 2014. Mary will now co-chair next year in 2015. And so we are very excited to have them here tonight. We also have with us to represent PAA and LABC, Jody Bianchi from LABC, Nikki Strait from PAA. Come on up. The Lakefront Music Fest has become a community event, one that we are very proud to be a part of as a school district. And I know that our students that sell tickets and parents and students that volunteer really love being a part of it as well, because we know that the money raised is really going to go back to our community and oftentimes back to our schools, which makes it really exciting for us to know that we're funding different projects that are going to make a difference. For LABC and for PAA, those dollars are designated and really go to help those two programs. And maybe Jody or Nikki would like to say what the dollars are going to go for.
So the patrons of the arts and activities, we do fundraising for all the non-athletic activities and art programs within the district. And it helps provide extra coaching assistance for some of the activities, band uniforms, choir, music sheets, theater scripts, all the sets for the theater and stuff like that. So that's where the money goes for the PAA. So thank you very much.
With the Laker Athletic Booster Club, the money goes back to different scholarships for kids, for the students, athletes, and then also uniforms. If a sports team needs uniforms, that money is put in to the account for that, and basically everything you said, awards. Eric, what else?
Mainly uniforms now that the school districts pick up.
Yes, and thank you for picking up those coaches.
So for the Prior Lake Rotary, they have finished up the tally this year, and at the Rotary meeting this past week presented the checks also to Jody and to Nikki, and are here tonight to present the big check. So, Mary, you want to?
Sure, thank you. I'm Mary. I'm the one of the co-chairs for this year, and first of all, I just want to say it was a huge honor, again, to work with the Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, specifically Laker Athletic Booster Club and patrons of the arts and activities. We could not do this and pull off this event without the support of our nonprofit partners. And not only, I think, and for all of you to know, 457 hours of volunteer time were provided by LABC PA And that's a huge number of volunteer hours. That does not count all of the time that was put into the event from Jim Delwo and Christy Mussman and Ashley Franks and really everyone that has helped support us through the school district. So we're very, very honored and proud to call you partners. And if I put on my other hat, I represent the YMCA, but I'm very proud to stand alongside the school district as the other nonprofit partner. It's been a blast working together with you. So on behalf of the Prior Lake Rotary Club, we would like to present you with a check in the amount of $28,130 for the Laker Athletic Booster Club and the patrons of the arts and activities.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to our Prior Lake Rotarians for being here tonight and being a part of this event. We have one more, but they haven't arrived yet, so we'll move on. We have an in-district Prior Laker award tonight that we would like to recognize Jim Delwo and his team. And so he wouldn't come up here alone, nor should he. He has got a great team of team members that have made a huge difference in our district this summer. For the past year and a half, as we've been doing major construction in our district. Jim, Paul, Daryl, you've made a huge difference in making sure that we were able to get our projects done on time. And for that, I know each of our administrators would give you a standing ovation because we couldn't do it without you. But we've also been able to get our projects in under budget oftentimes, and we've been able to do more than we could have done otherwise. And so you have to each feel really proud that we've been able to do all of this in a matter of months rather than a matter of years. And your contributions have made a huge difference. So thank you to each of you. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate your work. Paul, thank you. It's made a difference. Daryl, thank you for your leadership, for all three of you. We have very frameable certificates for each of you. Paul, a small token, just to say, we know the kinds of hours that you put in over the summer months and the efforts that you made to make sure that we were on time and on task. All that you've done as a school board, as administration, we get it, and we're really proud. Leo and Cindy Lee are going to be here, but they're not here yet, so we will go on.
Now is the time for open forum. We set aside 15 minutes to receive any type of citizen input through this portion of the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the board on anything tonight? Okay, seeing none. Personnel items. Matt.
All right. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Gruber. First up, we have candidates for approval. So tonight I recommend the following candidates for employment and I'm seeking board approval.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the candidates?
So moved.
Dan?
I'll second the motion.
Rich? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0.
And next I present the following leaves of absence and I'm seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion for the approved leaves?
So moved.
Lee? Second.
Second.
Dan? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes 6-0.
And lastly, I present the retirements of 3 employees. Mary Anderson, a noon supervisor at Five Hawks, who gave us 21 years of service, which in that job is flabbergasting. So that's phenomenal. Kristen Vlasic, who I've had an opportunity to serve on a number of committees with, including the hiring committee for the last principal hired at Glendale, and she's always been wonderful to work with. I've really appreciated her presence and what she's added to the culture in Prior Lake Savage area schools. And she's a 5th grade teacher at Glendale with 26 years of service. And then Jim Williams, one of our technology field technicians, who has been with the district for 11 years, but his presence in the high school and throughout the district has been always stabilizing, always positive, and he's made a huge impact on what we've been able to do with technology in the district.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve district retirements?
So moved.
By Dan, second.
I'll second the motion.
By Rich. Any comments? I'd just like to say thank you for those years of service. I don't know a couple of them, but my daughter had Mrs. Vlasic, and it was a wonderful experience. So just an example of what great people we have here. So, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. Okay, on to old business, which there is none. On to new business. Resolution, Mr. Rodine is coming up.
I know it says Ms. Fuller, but
I noticed that.
yeah,
You're not wearing
you
a
got stuck
skirt.
with me.
So,
I
yeah.
apologize for that. She's running intramural ping pong right now, so I'm here in her place. Every year we ask the board to approve the Minnesota State High School League grant on Form A. At Prior Lake Savage Schools, we waive the fee for all students that are on free and reduced lunch, and this is a way to kind of offset some of those costs that we have with the with those students. So as you can see, out of the 291, we have 85 students who are participating in all the sports that we offer through the Minnesota State High School League. So I'm asking for approval for that.
All right, do I have a motion for approval of the resolution of the school board?
So moved.
Lee, second.
Second.
By Dan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, roll call. Let's start again. Chad.
Aye.
Rich.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Aye. Dan.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 6-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up is Mr. Kern with the new youth shelter.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gruber. Thanks for this opportunity to update you on the memorandum that was provided to you earlier. You may have seen the article earlier in the Prior Lake American about the new shelter that is out by Shepherd of the Lake Church called Passageways. And that came about as a result of the Safe Harbor Act, which was new in 2011, and there was a new update to it in 2014 in regards to servicing youth who are victims of sex trafficking. And the provision that occurred on August 1st of 2014 was providing those youths with shelter and services that for the most part will be carried on at Passageways. And it's a different service model for the state, and our responsibility, our obligation as a district is to provide the educational component for Passageways. And it was began by The Link, which is a nonprofit organization which helps troubled youths who are involved either as victims of sex trafficking or the juvenile justice system or who are homeless. And so there are going to be up to 6 youths who will be at Passageways, ages 13 to 17. And the Minnesota statutes that are applicable for our district are 125A.15 and 125A.515. And both of those statutes speak to our obligation when a children's residential facility is in a school district. That school district is responsible for providing the education for those youths. And the other component that goes along with that is that the district where the facility is located is also responsible for following the Minnesota Department of Education regulations in regards to billing the resident districts for the cost of that education, whether they be special education or general education. And so part of our obligation is submitting an application to MDE to provide the educational component for this facility, and also working with Julie Sink in regards to the financial responsibilities that we have in connecting with the youth's resident districts when we bill for their tuition or for the general education component. So we are responsible for providing the education, and the home district is actually responsible for the cost of that education. And so that's what we are doing, or in the beginning stages of working with Julie to provide that and to follow those regulations by the Minnesota Department of Education. And we've been working with the two ladies who are the contact points for Passageways in regards to completing the application that we need to submit to MDE, because it's all part of an agreement that we would enter with them, and Dr. Gruber and Julie Sink are part of that application process, and we've connected with them so far, so we're nearing the completion of that application process. So I wanted to update you so that you were well aware of what our components were in that regard and what our responsibilities are in regards to our district responsibilities. So there, as the memorandum says, there are 6 venues that a student could participate in, and there could be a combination of the 6. So the students could be in either of our middle schools or the high school or Bridges ALC or with the Southwest Educational Cooperative, or the classroom that will be at Passageways, because there will be a classroom there where instruction could take place also. So it could be solely one of those 6, or it could be any combination of those 6 where a student may access the educational component. So there's the update. If you have any questions about it, I'd certainly try to answer them.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Is there ever a situation where the home district isn't known, and in that case, what happens? I mean, these kids are in serious condition, and is there ever a situation where a home district cannot be determined?
They either have a home district or they're a ward of the state. And if they're a ward of the state, I believe the state is still responsible for. We would still then bill the state for the cost of the education.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We've also talked about the possibility of using our ALC in the evening when there aren't students there. If the students at Passageways would like to participate in one of the online classes, we can either do it at Passageways or we could do it at the ALC and use that space as well. So it depends on individually what those students may need. And you might want to speak to the enrollment or the number of students that are there at the moment.
Right now, we were aware of 6 that were there, and one of the students was going to attend the ALC, but that student subsequently has actually left the shelter, so she won't be attending. But there are other, and the other part is we have to look at each case individually, so they're considered individual programs for these kids. We know of 2 students that were going to go to the Southwest Educational Cooperative because of their needs, and so we would look at that. Whether they were a general education student or a special education student, they would all have an individualized plan for them.
Does that make sense? All right, any other questions? All right, thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I believe is Amy with the MCA test overview.
Good evening. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Groover. I'm here to present an overview of the MCA test scores for the district. Multiple memos have been sent to you over the last month as these scores have been released from MDE. My goal tonight is to provide you further detail and some context for these scores and also to share next steps. Maggie Ekram, our data assessment coordinator, is sorry that she couldn't be here this evening. She had a personal matter she needed to attend to, but she looks forward to talking further with you and working with you at the data retreat in December. The first few slides I have tonight provide an overview of district reading, math, and science proficiency rates. This shows the percentage of students who meet or exceed expectations. Excuse me. Students in grades 3 through 8 and 10 take the reading test. Grades 3 through 8 last year was administered online, and grade 10 was the paper version. If we look at the difference between the state and the district, I need to click my button here. Our students outperform their state peers in reading by about 10 to 15%. As we move forward, we'd like to see this difference increase, and I'll highlight the work that's being done with our ELA committees to get us there. One cohort change, for most of our cohorts remains stable, but one cohort change I'd want to draw your attention to is our 4th to 5th grade. We did notice a 10% increase in our scores for 4th to 5th grade. As we looked at the data closer, we noticed that they had an increase in both the informational text and the literature strands of the reading test. And as we move forward with these standards, we'll look to emulate these results in other grade levels. Our MCA 3 test, again, for Minnesota, tests state standards that are inclusive of the Common Core standards. These standards were new and implemented in 2011-12 and first tested in 2013. They are more rigorous to help prepare students for college and career readiness. The passages are more complex, and the test itself has a larger number of questions. Our reading coordinator, Patty Green, is working with our ELA committee to further align our curriculum to the new, more rigorous ELA standards. Part of that work includes integrating ELA into the content areas, including social studies at the elementary level. Additionally, common assessments are also being developed so that we can fully align to the new standards and continue the work of checking understanding of students' understanding of this concepts throughout the year. On this slide, we see an overview of math proficiency. The MCA 3 math test was administered to students online in grades 3 through 8 and on paper in grade 11. Prior Lake Savage Area Schools is above the state, 15 to 22%, again shown in this last column. This is where we'd love to be with both reading and math. We did see one cohort decrease from 4th to 5th grade, and upon closer examination of this, we found this was partially due to a decrease in our data analysis strand of the test. I will work closely with the elementary math committee to further our work with the math expressions curriculum to help remedy that situation. We did notice a cohort increase from 6th to 7th grade, but this was partially due to an increase in the numbers and operations strand. As you can see, our students continue to do well in math. This is our 3rd year of implementation of the math expressions curriculum in elementary and new curriculum in the secondary grades. On this slide, we have our proficiency scores for science. Students in grades 5, 8, and 10 complete the science MCAs, all administered online in our district. The difference between the district and the state is a true area of celebration. Our 5th, 8th, and 10th graders outperform their statewide peers by 16.6 to 22.1%. These scores are evidence of our commitment to environmental education and our eSTEM initiative. Students in Prior Lake Savage area schools have multiple contexts from which to draw on to complete their understanding of earth science, physical science, life science, and the nature of science and engineering concepts as they're defined in the state standards. Our roots in EE, environmental ed, and our National Geographic curriculum, and our community partnerships also all contribute to this work. As you all know, our work in this area was celebrated a few weeks ago with our visit from the United States Department of Education. for their Green Strides Best Practices Tour. We were able to highlight our community partnerships and showcase our district commitment to environmental education and sustainability practices. In the next 3 bar graphs, we'll look at our district proficiency rates compared to our neighboring districts. This first graph shows reading scores. As you can see, we're aligned with our closest geographic neighbors. We are within tenths of a percent with Eastern Carver County and Lakeville. Our goal is to be aligned with the top 3 districts in reading proficiency, and our work with standards alignment down to the benchmark level through our work with common summative assessment development in reading, writing, language, and listening, speaking, and viewing will support our goal. This next graph shows math proficiency scores. In math, we are closely aligned with Wayzata, Edina, and Minnetonka. This is where we want to be. We attribute these scores in part to our work with the elementary level with the math expressions curriculum that came into effect 3 years ago. Lastly, here are our science proficiency comparisons. Again, Prior Lake Savage Area Schools is more aligned with those top 3 districts, those high-performing neighboring districts, which is, again, a celebration for Prior Lake. We can also celebrate our 3 to 6% increase from last year's scores. Our district was above the state average for growth in science. Our continued success for our students in science involves our continuous commitment to providing them with the vast experiences in this content area. Our eSTEM committee continues to review opportunities to expand and deepen our community partnerships. We also survey staff yearly as a check-in on our alignment with science standards, and the results of this survey help us plan future staff development. The last segment of my presentation elaborates on the information you received on our multiple measurements rating and our focus rating. A quick reminder, Minnesota received a waiver to use MMR instead of AYP to evaluate schools in 2012. MMR is more advantageous than AYP because growth is emphasized more than proficiency annually, and because there are multiple measures versus just one single measure. MMR encompasses, and they're listed here, proficiency as displayed on state accountability tests, student growth, students' actual growth compared to the projected growth by MDE, achievement gap reduction, again, actual narrowing of the achievement gap compared to projected narrowing, and graduation rates based on 9th grade enrollment. And graduation, of course, only pertains to the high schools. Our focus rating is our focus proficiency rates for our subgroups only, as displayed on state accountability tests, and our achievement gap reduction, which is, again, the actual narrowing of the achievement gap compared to projected narrowing. The MMR and FR calculations, just as a side note, were recalculated by MDE after scores were released in 2013. The recalculation did cause a dip on some of our scores, and it did cause what looks like a dip across the metro area, but really it was not a decrease in performance, it was a recalculation. The recalculation was completed to make the scores more fair and decrease data volatility, as seen by the MDE analytics team. MDE has special designations for Title I schools to show how each Title I school performs using the multiple measurements rating. Prior Lake Savage Area schools qualify as reward schools and celebration eligible, meaning that a reward school is the highest performing 15% of Title I schools in the state, and celebration eligible is the 10% of Title I schools with MMRs between the 60th and 85th percentile. This year's designations: Glendale celebrates its 2nd year as a reward school, Red Tail Ridge its 3rd year as a reward school, Greenwood and Five Hawks also celebrate their 3rd year as a celebration eligible school, and we will be applying for their celebration school status for Greenwood and Five Hawks. Just a reminder, only Title I schools can receive this designation. However, if Jeffers Pond and Westwood were Title I schools last year, MMR scores indicate they would qualify for these designations. Here are current and historical MMR scores. The dotted line signifies a change in calculation I referred to a minute ago between in 2013 for the 2013 scores. Therefore, moving forward, we'll focus our calculation on 2013 and 14 to ensure we're comparing data that was calculated the same way. We did see our MMR scores decrease from 2013 to 14 slightly. Our achievement gap reduction was smaller than the state predicted. That said, Prior Lake Savage Area Schools can celebrate their proficiency and graduation scores. These are consistently high. Our next steps include closer examination of the strand data for our subgroups to pinpoint areas of development within reading, math, and science. We'll work closely with building administrators, the special education department, and our English language learners department to share areas of strength and development and areas to focus on in 2014-15. Here are our current and historical focus rating scores. Focus rating, again, is focus proficiency, so it's looking at our subgroups, the proficiency of our subgroups, and then achievement gap reduction. With our focus rating, any decreases, again, were due to the achievement gap reduction, not as smaller as the state originally predicted. In 2013, we saw a larger increase from Five Hawks focus rating. In 2013, Five Hawks scored high in the proficiency area, and in 2014, Five Hawks scored high in proficiency and achievement gap reduction. So we saw an increase there. In conclusion, I just want to highlight our next steps with our data. We will continue to work with our IQ data warehouse to closely monitor student achievement. Our building problem-solving teams and child study teams will be supported by this data. Our learning teams through QComp will also utilize our data warehouse in the development of site and learning team goals this fall, learning team student achievement goals this fall. And lastly, our elementary and secondary assessment, grading, and reporting committees will continue their work with common summative assessments that will help students and teachers understand the state standards and their achievement of state standards throughout the school year. That is my presentation tonight. May I answer any questions?
Anyone? Questions?
I guess a quick question. Since this is last year's data from last year's students, most of the action items you have here are mainly focused on our process with the teachers, not on individual students. Is that correct?
I would say that as we look at real-time data, that's what we'll use to look at individual students. And we have our MAP data, our Ames Web data, and our Fontes and Pinnell benchmark data. Our MCA scores really provide us just a one test day, a one dip test. So we do look closely at our real-time data to make individual prescriptions for students.
So most of these recommendations are focused on certain areas, not on individual students, correct?
Correct.
Anyone else? Yep, Mike.
When you were showing our comparisons against other districts, do you have that data to compare with all of the districts that neighbor us? So, because I don't see Burnsville, Jordan, or New Prague up there.
We could.
And I think I think finally this year or last year we are a net gainer of open enrolled students. But as we're marketing ourselves, I know that this is certainly one data point that parents tend to look at is performance of the kids. So it certainly wouldn't hurt for us to be able to see how we're doing there, especially if I suspect we're probably doing quite well against them, but it'd be nice to have that concrete. And then, I know I've mentioned this in past years, but I do appreciate that you're showing the cohort performance from year to year, because I personally believe that's a more indicative aspect of how we're doing as a school district, because this year's third graders are not the same as last year's third graders, so I'm kind of perplexed by the state still looks at it that way, but in 3 months, I guess I won't have to worry about that. But what I am curious is, now that we actually have our data warehouse, will we have the ability to further dig into that? Because what's also different is this year's fourth graders may have a handful of kids that weren't
taking the test as last year's third graders, or last year's third graders may not be in our district as this year's fourth graders. So will we have the ability to really, when we truly compare last year's performance to this year's performance, to essentially net out those kids that weren't here, so that we really are looking at how effective is our teaching and the learnings that you mentioned, that we're looking at the strands and whatnot, because I think that's really going to be powerful for us to truly see it's truly making a difference. So just something to
Absolutely.
suggest.
Yeah. The short answer, sorry. The short answer is yes. We absolutely could, like you're kind of saying, sift through any students that would not follow us, and then have a cohort of just our students that we've been instructing from year to year, and really look at how that instruction was impacted.
That's great, because to me, that's one of the real powers of having that data available to really look at from that both macro and micro level. So I'm excited obviously we're already seeing a lot of the benefits, but I think it's hats off to all the administrators and teachers that are taking advantage of that.
And just a quick answer to your other question, we had a lot of data on what other neighboring districts are doing, and Maggie has compiled other graphs that I'd be happy to share with you by email, or
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
that we absolutely can send them. Some of them didn't show as well on the PowerPoint, so it was hard to read because they're littler, they're more line graphs, so I'd be happy to share those with you.
Great, thank you.
I thought it was interesting, following up on your cohort question, that the fourth graders to fifth grade cohort improved in the reading scores, right? Let me double check, but then had a drop of the same amount in the math.
I did notice that also. Yes. And again, we go back to that strand data to really analyze how that scores happen. And just like you're saying, they were very successful in certain strands in the math, and in the reading, and then they had struggles in areas of the math.
I guess I just echo a little bit of what Mike said. I've always been a proponent of the cohorts also, because third graders are not the same every year. It's different kids, which is obvious. And I know the state reports it a certain way, but that doesn't mean that we always have to report it that way. In addition, I would like to see that through, a 5-year period, those same kids going through. It may also reflect on how we're teaching and how effective our QComp program is. So I think it would be beneficial to be able to see that, to show our community and our parents how it is improving. And if it's not, what we're doing about it to change that. So I would echo that. I prefer that all the time anyway. So,
great. Yes, I'd be happy to share further detailed data as we move on, as we move forward. And I'm sure we'll look at further detailed data at the data retreat in December.
And Amy, I just had one comment on one of your slides where you're talking about the title schools of who receives status or celebration and
the designations.
The designations, yeah. I just wanted to reiterate, because I heard some comments from the public as far as the one where you had listed the schools.
Oops, sorry.
No, that's okay. And I know you highlighted it, but only the Title I schools receive the above designation. So the fact that our other elementaries aren't listed because they really weren't eligible, but they would have qualified.
Correct.
Because I think sometimes the perception is if you don't get this status, it doesn't mean, and they're not even eligible to get it.
Correct.
So I think there's some misconceptions out there that, not everybody's able to get the status.
Correct. You have to be a Title I school to receive these designations. So because JP, Jeffers Pond, and Westwood were not Title I schools last year, they could not receive the official designation. However, looking at their MMR and FR scores, they would qualify if they were Title I schools.
And it changes every year. So like even some of these schools, I think Glendale's flip back and forth sometimes. Some of them flip back and forth with Title I at times. So
correct, they do.
One year they might be eligible, and the next year they might not be.
Correct. It's dependent on the free and reduced lunch population, and they absolutely do change. Their Title I status can change year to year.
And so is that just every year based on the past year?
Correct. It's based on October 1st enrollment of free and reduced lunch population. Their building free and reduced lunch population percentage needs to be at or above the district average. So with our district average is, I believe, 12.6. I knew it was a 0.3 or 6 for our October 1st. So any buildings that have above 12.6 for 12.6% free and reduced lunch population, any of our elementaries will receive Title I funding next school year. But at this time, those buildings will remain the same as this year.
Okay.
So it doesn't have any changes.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you for that.
Thank
report.
you.
Next up is the Canvas election results. Dr. Gruber.
The board has requested to set a date to canvass the election results between the 3rd and 10th day following the election. So that's November 7th through the 14th, 2014. The suggested date would be November 10th at 6:45 p.m., just prior to our regular board meeting. And board action is requested.
All right.
That works for everyone.
Does that work for everyone? I'm assuming people are here. Okay, do I have a motion to have the date November 10th at 6:45 for the canvassing results?
So moved.
By Dan, second.
Second.
By Chad. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. And Dr. Gruber, up for approval of superintendent goals and plan operational.
There are two documents in your board packet. One is, the second one actually, is the administrative operational plan, which is a 3-year lookout plan for what I anticipate happening in our district over the course of the next 3 years. And then the goals for this year really have to do with the 14-15 operational plan, and then delineating out that if it's action work, something we're working on this year, is in the middle column of my goals, and on the far right column are the research and development items that would appear in the goals on that draft. So as you look at my superintendent goals, you'll notice that they reflect the 2014-15 operational plan. And our focus, of course, this year is very much on how we've started with beginning our Spanish immersion. Loyola del Lago is in its second month now. We, this evening, had the ribbon cutting for our fabrication lab, which is up and running. Our new addition to the high school is finished and completed, and you are getting pictures of the wonderful ways that it's being used for students in 21st century learning environments. Our USDE visit a couple of weeks ago now, and subsequent invitation to share a blog on their website, which occurred last week. So there are all kinds of things happening throughout our district that are reflected in my goals. And an important one is our one-to-one implementation that is happening at the 8th grade and then in CARTS throughout our system. That we'll be reviewing as we move forward into our study session at the end of this month. I shared these with you last month. We've done a little bit of cleanup of them, but they haven't changed significantly, but I would entertain questions.
Okay, Dan.
Yeah, we talked about in regards to the Healthy Food Initiative, bumping up before. So I just want to make sure this reflects what we were after, having the recommendation to the board by December. And then in the next column over, it says to implement the recommendations in the spring. Just want to make sure that that's what the board.
We have the right.
Because my understanding is I think that the workshop session at the end of this month we will be talking about.
It might be the end of next month.
Okay.
He's pulling. Adam is pulling together a group of high school students at the high school twice a month this month during October and beginning of November, as well as compiling the information from Wayzata, who has pulled out, as well as analyzing the current food plan at our high school. And then we'll be bringing recommendations to the board study session in November, and then for a decision in December. That's the way I recall.
Will that still allow us then to decide what we want to do before the February deadline? Okay, that's fine.
It's a very minimal process to make any kind of change. It's a phone call and a sign-up form, if we choose to do that.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have board action on this?
Yes.
Do I have approval, a motion to approve the superintendent goals and operational plan? Rich?
I will make that motion.
Second?
Second.
By Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That opposed? That passes 6-0. School board goals. All right. Todd is not here this evening, but those are listed on page 114. Thank you. It's in paper if you're in paper, or if you're online. And this is our 3-year board governance plan that we continue to update each year. And I was not at the last study session, but I believe there was discussion. That's correct. The board members that were there, Lee and I were not. So is there any other questions or comments or highlights that anyone would like to discuss? Okay, seeing none?
Okay. Because I wasn't there, and you discussed it, so does this reflect your discussion?
I would say yes. I
Yeah.
think one of the areas where we talked about is about the one-to-one initiative, making sure that we analyze that and whether the pace that we had originally set, whether that's quick enough.
And whether it was the right equipment.
Yeah. and whether that was the right equipment, iPads or Chromebooks.
Okay. And the possibility of a referendum or land, that's still in discussion, but that's one of our goals. You're comfortable with that? Okay.
2015, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the school board goals? By Chad, second.
I'll second that motion.
By Rich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. And I lost my page. Okay, and then we are at policies. Dr. Gruber, were you going to take this?
Yes, I will be happy to do that. We have a series of policies for you tonight. Our policy committee is on pace to complete the review of all policies by the time Lee Shimmick leaves the board.
Only took 13 years.
Having
Don't come up with any more.
Some of these policies I'm going to put before you tonight have not been reviewed since 1999, so it's time. Some of them we've just reformatted, like 520 student surveys. We looked at the MSBA policy, we looked at our current policy, and we reformatted it to, basically they said the same thing, so we reformatted our policy, but we used our policy wording. So 520 is for your first read. Questions on that?
Any questions? It's a first read, so we'll have a second on this. But if you have questions, obviously contact a
And there's
very
no
diligent.
changes for this one?
No, not as noted. It's just the format, put
Okay.
into our format.
Okay.
This one was last reviewed in 2004.
Okay.
The second one is 902.1, tobacco-free environment. We decided to go with the MSBA, so we got rid of the current policy, which was 3 paragraphs, one very short, 1-sentence paragraph and 2 paragraphs, and went with the MSBA format as well as the wording. It seemed clearer, and it was in a format that you could understand and that parents could reference if needed.
And it was also up to date with e-cigarette.
Right.
Yeah, that's in, so it's pretty up to date.
And this is one that was in 1999.
So this one's right out of MSBA.
Right out, yes, same wording as MSBA.
Okay.
And then 902.2 is the drug-free workplace.
And drug-free school.
And this was a 1-sentence in 1999.
Weren't so verbose back then.
Yeah. And we moved to the MSBA language again because there are so many different substances now that can be included in this policy. And we felt like this one was much more reflective of current times. So 902.2 is MSBA wording. And then the next two were the policy, this one didn't even have a number on it, but had to do with religion and religiously sensitive issues. And it's policy 609 reformatted with MSBA. We put the two together. At the time that these policies were written, and this was last reviewed, one of them in 1992, and one of them in 2005. But it used to be that students were released from school on a certain afternoon of a week, an hour early, to go to their bus to their religious institution for some kind of instruction. We don't do that anymore. Schools don't pull children out necessarily. So that doesn't need to be in our policy. As stated previously, we went with the more general policy statement as MSBA has here. So those two were put into one. And then the last one was 903. In 903, we updated it. We took out one paragraph. We used the MSBA definitions, purpose, general statement, all the way to appropriate communication. And then we used what we had already had in our previous policy, and we continued with that as we move forward. And that one was last approved in the year 2000. Those are all the policies for a first reading.
Yeah, those were the first reading.
Can I ask a question of the policy committee?
Sure.
On the visitors, the 903 under the responsibility A, it talks about approval by the school board of procedures and requirements. Will we, as a school board, will those policies of each individual school be brought to us for approval and then added to this policy?
I want to say that it's part of the
It's
handbooks.
reverse.
Isn't it part of the handbooks, the visitors?
On their procedures.
Yeah.
And we can bring the procedures forward, but we don't necessarily approve.
Well, it says here, upon approval by the school board.
Wow.
And tell me where you are again.
Right. Responsibility A.
Under 3, responsibility A,
Okay.
the last sentence in that paragraph.
I guess I read that the policy committee sees the procedures, and being the policy committee part of the school board, that's what that meant. I mean, if we want to bring it to the school board, we could, but usually our
That says,
procedures
and then it says
don't.
attached to this policy as an addendum.
There's a lot of policies that have procedures attached. You don't see all of them.
I think
Do that if you want.
the buildings have a very strict visitor procedures that they use when you enter any of our buildings, and those all follow the same format. So that format is one of security and making sure that all visitors are identified in the office before they come into the building. So maybe this wording should be clearer.
Okay. Yeah, I just needed clarification there. And then one other item, under appropriate communication, on the next page, 127, and the second sentence, conferences, phone calls, and written communication, it doesn't say anything about electronic communication.
Okay.
Did we want to add something there? Because there's a lot of contact now.
We could reference our electronic communication policy, or electronic.
We could add that in. Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah.
Email?
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you make on that?
There's a lot of communication over Schoology now.
More there than phone calls.
What's that?
More there than phone
Yes,
calls.
so.
All right. Okay, and then I believe we have a final reading on 608.1, provision of special ed and related services at private schools.
And as you recall, last month when we reviewed 608.1, there was only one change, and that was to remove the word under early childhood special education programs in the fourth line down, the Family Service Plan team. Team is removed. It will read Family Service Plan or IEP, which stands for Individualized Educational Plan. And that was the only change to that policy.
Any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve policy 608.1 as noted?
So moved.
By Lee, second.
Got the motion?
By Rich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. Okay. Now we're at administrative reports. Superintendent.
Yes. I have spread out across this whole area since
He lost
Tucker could not
papers.
be here tonight. I took his whole place and mine. One of the things I actually sent you a link today to the Star and Tribune article that appeared in Sunday's paper yesterday on giving PEP a free pass. And Eric Rodin is actually quoted in here because, as you recall, last spring you decided that we would have our students have a free pass to any of our athletic or activity events except for our hockey and football, which are major fundraisers for those two teams, as well as our plays and last concert. So all of the other activities our students could participate in. And I know I've been to a couple of the different activities, and there have been students there, not as many as I'd like to see, not as many as Friday night at our football game, certainly, but I'd love to see more students coming to our soccer games, to our lacrosse games, to any activity that we have throughout our district. And hopefully we will be able to attract them by this new policy that you implemented. But we were quoted in the paper, and I wanted you to be aware of that. Tonight was, as I mentioned earlier, was the ribbon cutting for our Fab Lab, and we were honored to have Senator Eric Pratt and Representative Tony Albright there, as well as our partners at the University of Minnesota, Seagate. Several of our other community partners were there. Students were demonstrating the kinds of activities that they've been doing, the projects they've been working on, and their dreams for what's going to come next. So that was a really special night, and thank you to the board for all being there to participate in that event. Also, I was honored to ask to submit a guest blog for our USDE site for the Green Strides Tour website, and we've been getting really positive feedback on Twitter as a result of that as well for our district. We finished a marketing video last week for La Ola del Lago, our Spanish immersion, and I was over there while the children were singing their song. There are two songs, actually, and it was really exciting to think that these children have been in school less than a month, and they were being given directions by Mr. Kaczynski, the site coordinator, in total Spanish and following his directions perfectly. It was really quite fun to see that happen. Their songs will be a part of the ribbon cutting. The chamber, Prior Lake Chamber, has asked if they could host the ribbon cutting for the school program. So they're going to be doing that on October 23rd at 10 a.m. Our guests will be able to have a tour of the new program, and the students will sing their songs that they practiced last Friday during the video production. We wanted to have the short video prepared for our incoming parents of 4-year-olds who are going to have kindergarten students next year, so they would have an idea of what's happening in our Spanish immersion as they make that big decision ahead of them. So we will be having coming up our kindergarten registration in January, but prior to that we'll have an open house in October as well, so that our parents can ask questions and see our elementary schools and the programs that we're offering. This morning, Carol Levin was welcomed to Edgewood School to the nature-based preschool for a segment on what's cool in our school. This program is just one of many examples of how we're becoming known in our district as an East STEM district and schools, and we're very excited to have that happen. Should be showing in the next couple of weeks, and we'll let you know as soon as we hear back on what morning it's going to be provided. On October 21st, there's going to be a candidate forum. The Prior Lake Chamber, again, is sponsoring a school board and city council candidate forum from 6 to 9 in the city council chambers at City Hall. Our school board candidates will meet from 6 to 7:30, and the forum will be open to the public and moderated by Prior Lake Chamber Vice President Ed Spiker. The forum will be broadcast live and then rebroadcast on PLTV and available on demand at the city's streaming media website. So you're all invited to participate in that. And lastly, our Laker Educational Foundation is planning the first annual Blue Jeans Ball to be held at Green Acres Event Center, which is a refurbished, very beautifully refurbished barn in Eden Prairie across from Flying Cloud Airport. It's ramping up to be a very special evening, and I hope that you can join us as we benefit students in our schools and in our community. They'll be highlighting hopefully some of the programs that have benefited from the grants that they have given to our schools. So we're looking forward to that happening.
Is that it? That's it. All right. Julie, looks like she has a report.
I had a request, or good evening, I had a request to talk a little bit about enrollment. And so I put together a little PowerPoint. There's 3 short slides just to talk a little bit about where we're at and where we're going, some thoughts for the board for future discussion. For 13, I did a little comparison from 2013-14 to 2014-15. And in the blue is October 1 counts, so a year ago at this time, what our October 1 counts were. And you can see our total numbers were 7318. And, you know, there was a lot of discussion over what's been happening. We usually consider that we'll lose about 70 students throughout the year for our enrollment. And the red represents where we were at the end of the year last year, our final numbers, and we actually increased some students, about 37 students. So we were at 7354. And as you can see, the green now shows the total enrollment we have for our, as of right now, October 1 counts, we're at 7569. And you can see how that breaks down by each of the schools. Our high school has seen the largest growth. We have seen one of the largest 9th grades. We're at about 684 students in our 9th grade right now. So we are seeing our largest student population in that, at that level. Our middle school stays pretty steady. They're up also. And our elementary is up about 65 students from the end of year last year. So we are definitely a growing district. That 7569 represents exactly 100 students over what we had projected as a budget number for last year. So we're up 251 students from this time last year and about 215 students from the end of year last year until now. And if we consider that same percentage of an increase that like we saw this past year, instead of losing 70, we gained 35, we'll probably gain around 40 students at that same percentage. So we could possibly be right at that 7,600 number by the end of the year this year, if that same trend holds true this year. So we have definitely seen a switch from enrollment of declining enrollment throughout the year to an increase, and that has really brought us back to about 10 years ago where that same anomaly was happening. I'd like to talk a little bit about PSEO also. Last year, we had much higher numbers in our PSEO. We had 65 full-time PSEO students and 79 part-time. This year, we're only seeing 30 full-time PSEO students and 61 part-time. That's definitely increased our enrollment at the high school because more students are choosing to stay at our high school instead of leaving to go for PSEO options. One of the reasons may be because we do have a smaller senior class this year. than we had last year, so that could be a possibility. But we also are offering so many more classes of college in the school, at our high school, those upper level classes, so students can get some of that credit at our high school without having to leave our campus to go to a post-secondary option. And lastly, I wanted to show a little bit about a historical enrollment and projection. In the blue, the dark blue is the actual numbers that we had. I'm taking this directly from our prior demographic study that we did, and we're updating that as we speak. That October 1 counts are really important. In the solid blue are the actuals, and you can see 12, 13 are the final years. What we had projected is in the light blue, and what our actual was last year, you can see it was much higher than we had anticipated. And if you look at the current year, you can see what we had projected was 73.13, and we're at 75.69. So we're well over that projection, even looking out 4 or 5 years. And so that is something that's really important for us to look at for future growth. I think one of the things that when this demographic study was completed, was in the midst of the recession. And so we weren't thinking that we would be growing as quickly as we are, and that things have turned around in our economy, and so therefore we're seeing the results of that in our school district as well. So it's some good information. It is very telling when you look at this graph as to where we are today.
And we have plans, don't we, of doing another?
Yes. We are. In fact, we wanted to wait until these October 1st numbers were in to really get us really have a good start for this next demographic study. And I think it will help us to make those future projections. We should have something here in December for board review.
Just out of curiosity, we did a demographic study when we were gaining 200 to 300 kids a year back a number of years ago. Do we still have access to that study? I'd just be curious to know if that now is back on target, because it was way off when we went through the recession. Right. But would we be back in that same spot?
I haven't seen that, but I will dig it out and we'll take a look at that.
I'm just curious.
Is that Hazel's?
Yes.
Hazel Reinhardt.
But remember, that is 3 scenarios: low, medium, and high. And so,
well, and this was done
when
we were, 200 and 300 kids a year, and so I'm just kind of curious of how that would have panned out in the end. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right. Matt, do you have nothing to, okay.
Dave, I wanted Dave to report on lunch.
Okay, Dave, you wanted to come?
Yep.
Here.
I think you have to be up here. Okay.
If you want you on
At
camera.
least you need a microphone.
I'm kind of shy.
Good evening. Just a little update on lunch. I did a report here about a month ago. I brought some student concerns forward on the lunch, and one of those students came forward to me last week and said, "Mr. Lund, I need to talk to you." And she came down and sat with me, and just a fantastic student, said, I came to you a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks ago about concerns about the lunch. You were nice enough to bring it to the school board. She said, I need to tell you that the lunches in the last week and a half, which had been since the 1st of October, have really been good. She said, we get a variety of every day. The flavors have been excellent. She said, some of the food has been better than I've ever had. I took that then and I went down in the lunchroom. I talked to groups of students as they were hanging around, and every student that I talked to, and I suppose after I talked to her, I probably talked to 30 or 40 random students around the lunchroom. Every one of them said the same thing. The food had been fantastic. They are trying a variety of food I haven't seen tried in our lunchroom. Anecdotally, talking to Emily, our head food service person during the day, I didn't give her enough time to collect the actual numbers, and I don't know if Julie's got the numbers, but she said even there was one lunch shift where we had our biggest lunch shift. We had 500 students take the mainline lunch that day. Now that lunch shift has 680 students in it, but that's it was the single highest number of students we've had take a mainline lunch. in the last 4 or 5 years. So, you know, I don't know if everybody's completely satisfied, and I'm not sure where they on portion size, but I thought I needed to report to you that the students I talked to, they're very pleased with the menu options since October 1st. If you could get down there and see the rice bowls and the noodle bowls and the chicken. We had real chicken wings 2 weeks ago, and the students were just thrilled. I mean, actual chicken wings that were marinated or had some kind of barbecue sauce. So, again, I brought it forward to you when students had concerns. I thought I had a duty to bring it to you when our students came up to me and said, gee, things are fantastic. And day in and day out, I'm going out and asking the students what they think of our lunch. Again, anecdotally, I don't have actual numbers. I'm seeing far more students eating. I'm seeing far fewer bag lunches, and I mean noticeably in our lunchroom.
Good.
Questions?
No, I would just say the unofficial poll at the Royal House is we have stopped baking, so we are now taking the main line, which is pretty good.
It was a Parmesan chicken that apparently was just rocking the socks off the lunchroom. And there's also a Cajun chicken fettuccine Alfredo that we've had the past couple of years that even the kids say got upgraded a little this year, and some of them are saying it's better than they've had in some restaurants.
According to the numbers he gave, it's 74% of the children went through that line, so that's amazing.
In that lunch shift. Now, that's what Emily gave me today, and she was going to double check.
What we've seen is that our students are taking more of the mainline lunches than they are going through a la carte, which I've seen that. I looked back through September numbers, and that's true even in September. Now, I know that our October 1 began a new menu items for the high school. We only have 3 weeks of data for September versus 4 weeks for last year, so I try to do a daily rate. Our enrollment is up 2.9%. Our lunch counts are up 2.4%. So even, and you know, it's a rough estimate right now because of just everything that's going on. So I think October will really give us the solid numbers, which is why we want to report in November, because we'll really have some good numbers for this month of October.
We're seeing it in overall lunch lines there, and Emily's working with that. She's finding out if she serves a couple of these things, she's going to have to serve 2 main lines. Because in the past, it wasn't that crowded because the students were going to a main line, an alternative line, and then over to the a la carte. Not now. They're all hitting the main line. They think this stuff is great, and they're giving the kids samples. And, you know, happy lunchroom makes for happy principal, by the way. I just kind of wanted to throw that in.
Okay. And then Jeff is not here tonight. I guess we'll do a little shout out. Did you want to?
Yes. Assistant Superintendent Jeff Holmberg is not here this evening. He is home hopefully tonight with his new baby boy, Ryan Jeffrey Holmberg, and wife Annie, and big sisters Addie and Lucy. So he now has 3 children under the age of 5.
Oh.
And healthy baby arrived on Friday evening after they went to their nephew's football game.
Ooh.
And then came home and then ended up in the hospital. So.
8 pounds, 14 ounces, was that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Any board reports?
We did have a facilities meeting last Thursday. We reviewed some of the new developments coming in Savage and how they may impact the schools. And then at an upcoming board session, they'll be coming with the final bills and account and the numbers, the financials for all the improvements that happened during the summer.
Tucker's not here, but we know homecoming was a success, I believe.
Yes, I think it was. Did you want to speak about homecoming?
Homecoming week was fantastic. It really was. The student council, since I've been here, is the best job of organizing all the activities that went on. The week was fantastic. Student behavior was outstanding. School spirit. We had a pep fest out on the football field, you know, which now we can because we have turf and don't have to worry about mud and shoes and everything. And the jumbotron.
That was fun. I went.
Phenomenal turnout. We had a gorgeous day for it. The game is, 60 to 7 was not too bad, and
talked to the APs, and they said student behavior overall exceeded their expectations at the dance. So it was an extremely successful week. So that's both from the students, from the teachers.
Great. Okay, future events. I think Sue Ann touched on these already, the candidate forum, but we do have no school, E through 12, October 16th and 17th and the 20th, so we have our MEA break coming up. And then the board study session is October 27th at 6 p.m. here at the DSC. I think that's about it. I might entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Lee, second. Come on. All right, second, Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes 6-0. Thank you. Have a good night.